Former President Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to 2016 hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Pro-Trump and anti-Trump protesters flocked to the New York courthouse where it all happened, contributing to the spectacle of a pretty historic event. What's the political significance, though, of what went down today? Let's bring in the front bench to talk about that. With me this evening, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is here, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Good to talk to you. I don't know if I thought a few years ago that we'd be gathering again to talk about Donald Trump, but here we are. Lisa, Bruce Heyman was on, and he said, look, what this politically means moving forward is kind of an even heightened battle for what the Republicans are about. Do they coalesce around Donald Trump, or do they split off in numbers great enough to have a big impact? What's your sense of that?
Well, my sense is guided by the fact that DeSantis is already down 30 points behind Trump, according to some polls that we've seen. And that, to me, sends a signal that people are coalescing around Trump, that they're taking this as politically motivated, and they are rallying around their chief, for lack of a better way of looking at it, their commander-in-chief. So it's not a terrible thing for Trump to actually be going through this, both in terms of fundraising and in terms of friend-raising for his bid to become the candidate again for the Republican Party of Canada, Republican Party in the United States. Sorry, I'm at a Canada-U.S. summit.
Breaking news.
I keep saying Canada at the end of everything. Okay. Yeah. God, and I'm starting it,
That's all good.
That's it, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Rob, your thoughts on, I think Lisa makes a really good point insofar, and that's backed up right by some data, which is, after the midterms, Trump wasn't necessarily a favorite. We have seen his poll numbers steadily increase, and certainly buoyed among Republicans with what has just happened between Thursday and today. He's also, according to his campaign, raised $7 million in that period. What does that tell you?
Well, Mr. Trump is popular. He is, to Lisa's point, the leader of the Republican Party. But the dirty little secret that the Republicans don't want to admit is that if Donald Trump is the nominee, that's very good news for President Joe Biden and the Democrats, because we've established in the 2018 midterms, in the 2020 presidential race, and in the 2022 midterms, that Mr. Trump is not necessarily good up and down the ticket. It's great that he has fanatical supporters. It's great that he can outraise the sort of very, I don't want to. I'd say that they're not a lackluster field, but Ron DeSantis is a real Potemkin village. I mean, we all thought that he was going to be this mighty Trump killer, Trump slayer, the Florida governor, and his candidacy, to Lisa's point, is floundering because Mr. Trump is absorbing all of the oxygen in the room, and that's good for Mr. Trump. It's probably good for his candidacy, but I'm not really sure if it's good for the Republican Party, and I still do not believe that Donald Trump will be the president of the United States again.
So, Tom, the Democrats come to you and they say, how do we navigate this? Because this won't just be today. It's going to unfold. There's going to be a court process. He's going to, even tonight, he's going to speak to reporters. Do we stay out of the fray, or do we kind of counter it more aggressively? That's a debate that happened the first time Trump won. And I'm wondering what your advice to them on the eve of his arrest today would be.
If nothing else, this is evidence that Donald Trump still can dominate completely a full news cycle. It's been absolutely astonishing. I was just doing French television, a regular show that I do, and it was Donald Trump all the time. And you can be sure that's the same thing around the world. So you can imagine being in the U.S. right now. If I were part of Trump's team, I'd be very worried about the precedent that was just created, because now they can go after him for the Georgia election, they can go after him for January 6th, and it's very difficult to say, this is just set up by Democrats. Trump has gone after the judge because his daughter was a volunteer for another party. I mean, this is where we are in American politics right now. Trump is being Trump. I'd be very worried if I were him. If I were the Democrats, I'd stay out of it, because you want to be able to say the prosecutor, Mr. Bragg, is completely above the fray. He has no partisan tint, and if they weigh in too heavily, it'll just work against them. Trump's already going to be spinning that it's a conspiracy, that it's a partisan conspiracy against the only person who has a real chance to become their candidate in the next election. So I think that the less the Democrats say about it, the better. let Biden be Biden. Let him stay up a little bit high road, talk to higher values, and let Trump continue to wallow in the mud. I agree with Rob that, yes, Trump will definitely get the nomination if things continue to play out, but don't forget, the trial's set for January. It's almost a year from now. We'll be heading right into the season of all of the primaries, and how's that going to play out in the minds of the average American? It's one thing for them to have that today, but this is going to continue to weigh on Trump heavily for the next year. So we'll see whether it starts to wear him down.
Your thoughts, Brian? I mean, I like the line, let Biden be Biden. The issue with that is even Democrats are not wholly, if you look at any of the polling recently, wholly behind him as their candidate. I mean, we know he's supposed to announce re-election very shortly, but there's not a complete coalescing of support around him, although maybe Trump as his opponent changes that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I think from the Democrats' point of view, you're going to want to stay out of it. I would hope for the first reason, which is the most important, it's the right thing to do. Just let the sort of judicial branch do its work and don't get involved. And that would be the typical thing that governments and politicians have done in the past. So hopefully they would follow that approach. Secondly, they should stay out of it as well, because there is a Trump is sort of rewriting things, right? It's certainly he's making history in infamous ways, but he's also rewriting the rules, and he has been doing so since he entered politics. So in this case, nobody really knows what will end up happening. And I think everybody alluded to this a little bit. It's like Donald Trump believes that if you're talked about, that's a good thing. Doesn't matter what's being said. Doesn't matter how negative, how disastrous one may think it is. If you're being talked about, that's a good thing. So on a political level, this may indeed be something that's helpful to him. I would hope that he would be worried about the judicial sort of the judicial part of this, but on a political level, it can be something that kickstarts things, give it some more breath in his campaign, as the polling may show that's maybe the case. And on top of that, I shared the stage. I'm at the same summit as Lisa, and I shared the stage with Jane Harman, a former member of Congress, Democrat, who basically on the stage said, didn't say anything nice about Trump to give context, but then said, this may very much help him. This may very much help him in his election. So she certainly made that analysis. So on all that to say, if you're the Democrat, it's the right thing to do to let the judicial sort of process run its course. But also from a political point of view, if you inflame it, you may not be helping yourself as much as you think. And in fact, you may perversely, for some reason, be helping Donald Trump kind of breathe air into his campaign.
The real question is, what does it mean for the Republican Party of Canada, though? No, I'm just kidding. We're going to take a quick break with the front bench.
I know.
I'm kidding. I'm teasing. I know. Breaking